I'm Iosif Moraru. I was born in Romania, but I moved to Italy when I was 9, and now I'm living in Italy. I'm serving the church here in Pavia as in kids ministry, and with the local Students for Christ group, which I've been active part of for my years in university here in Pavia. And we've been through quite a lot these past months. We're enjoying some more freedom. We're enjoying some more calmness, and probably I'll share something about our experience here during my presentation. But as I'm a very bad time manager, I don't know how long it will take, so I better start so we don't get off schedule. When I was asked to say something about evangelism in such a difficult time, my first thought was about Paul, because we experienced a very long and very strict quarantine, and that's why he came as first in my mind. He spent about 5 to 6 years in prison totally during his life, or in home custody, if we can call so, his 2-year period in Rome. And he has been through quite a lot, and he has been in a lot of situations like we have been or that we may experience in the future. And what were these obstacles? And the obstacles that we're facing now. The distance, which means being away from people. We have to social distance. It's mandatory. We can't stay together. In Italy, still, we can't assemble in large groups. You have to be careful because, for example, they are seeing that too many people are going to pubs or bars. So there are already announcements with threats to restore quarantine some way in some areas. And then isolation, that's very, very bad thing, because when you're alone, you're more vulnerable. And then the limitation of his personal freedom. And something that I've been noticing these days is the lack of trust. People don't trust their neighbor because probably they have had to fight for the last toilet paper roll. Who knows? Or maybe here in Italy, a big thing was the yeast, the one you used to bake. At one point, there was none. And that was a very great argument for people who were left with the last piece. And also for the government, because conspiracies arise every day and everyone tries to blame someone else for what's going wrong. And that was the same in the times of Paul, because he was living during actual persecution. I mean, we are not experiencing that kind of lack of trust. They don't see us as enemies, but probably adversaries to that last roll of toilet paper. And then the lack of resources, because as for Paul, in our times, many people have lost their jobs, their incomes, and we know how important it is for students to have a small job to sustain and maybe cover some of the expenses he has. Okay. So how did Paul tackle these issues? The first one, I called it surprise the world, and I'll let you know about why. Here I have written the passage in Acts 27:34, where Paul was imprisoned in Philippi. And he was put in the deepest part of the dungeon with his feet in the wooden blocks and in complete darkness. And more importantly, with no reason. He had received a treatment that wasn't the treatment for Roman citizens. So he had received a lot of abuse, but we see that he also didn't deserve it at all. Not only because he wasn't doing anything good, but because also the law protected him. So he was, how can I say, doubly wrong, you know? But he does something very surprising here. When he sees that the guardian of the prison is about to kill himself, and you know, probably I wouldn't have stopped him. I probably looked to another way, or probably I thought that's maybe too dark. I'm not sure what he's about to do, because probably we could think that the guardian deserved what was coming for him. But Paul reassured him, stop, don't do that. We're all in here, you don't have to worry. And then went further on, listened to him, to his question, to his cry for help. And not only that, he went further on even more. He went into his house, shared a meal with him, and then preached the good news and baptized them. So he did something very unconventional here. He surprised. He took the guardian by surprise and saved his life 2 times, his material life and then his spiritual life. And the other thing that I would like to briefly focus on is the teamwork. Paul was about teamwork. He always tried to have a companion with him, and he tried during these times of his isolation not to remain idle, but to be active, to encourage people that were working with him, that had worked with him, and to have a relationship with them. So I have here 2 extracts from 2nd epistle to Timothy, when we see that Paul is sharing his mind. He writes openly to Timothy, and he's saying, look, everybody has turned away from me. And he says the names because probably Timothy knew them as well. And not only talking about his personal life, his struggles, his problems, but also giving instructions and telling him what to do, who to send to him, how to help. He was organizing the work that he had started. He was keeping a teamwork. So we're going to focus about how we can surprise the world in these difficult times with an evangelistic purpose, and how to do some effective teamwork. Okay. So, Surprise the World is actually the title of a book I have here, written by Michael Frost. And I have been greatly impacted by this book, and I want to share with you 3 points of what the author calls 3 good habits of an evangelist. Because, you know, it's not always easy for us to identify ourselves with Paul, because he was the master evangelist. He had the right answer to everything. He had the right teaching to give. But maybe we don't feel so prepared as him. We don't feel as empowered as him. Maybe we are shy. Maybe we don't feel called to be like an evangelist, an official evangelist, as a job, for example, a whole occupation. But here we can see some ways that we can evangelize just by doing our lives, just by living. And how can we do that? How can we be impactful, have a meaning in the lives of those around us if we're not really allowed to be in contact with them? So one of the biggest problems I've seen and I've heard of in this time is that people are away from home or from their friends, depending on where the pandemic has caught them. Because Students usually live in close quarters, close to each other. They see each other every day at university. And there are lots of opportunities to evangelize. Here, maybe we're home. And we don't have many friends because we left before college, and then all other friends left to other colleges. So we feel ourselves in a difficult situation, but every day we can evangelize our neighbor through words of affirmation, or our friends or our colleagues in the university that maybe we have online lessons together, we have maybe Zoom sessions together, or some acts of kindness. It's not easy to receive acts of kindness these days. And it's important and here we realize the importance of maybe doing it on purpose, because we are alone. I mean, it's quarantine. Most people live alone, or one or two friends or their family. And they don't have many interactions. Even from now on, our interactions will be limited. So I think that's an important habit we can develop to bless others, also with gifts. These are some little attentions, little ideas that we can show people the love that God has put in us. Another point that is presented in this book is it, which means having intimacy with people. How do I develop intimacy if I have to stay away from them? That's a tricky one. That's difficult. It's not really easy. We, as humans, gain a lot of trust when sharing meals. In every occasion we try to eat together. It's a way that we have had for ages to socialize. That's it together. It's always been done. And that's how we are used to relate to other people. And then, there's a glitch in my PowerPoint presentation. There's sharing meals and then spending time together, listening to other people. They have so much to say, our friends. They have so much on their hearts. And sometimes we tend to just say what we have, what our burden is, instead of listening to their needs and be able to listen to the prompts of the Spirit on how to try and help them. And the third point that I think it's important in our way of evangelizing in the following months, in the next months, is listen. And that's listening to God. It's very difficult to rearrange your life when it seems that it's been just turned upside down, because it's most likely that even the times for the lessons are changed. It's likely that, for example, being in a family with not much access to the internet or to the tools that allow us to go on internet or internet connections, that we are limited in that way as well. And we have to organize a designated time to listen from the Lord, to have a personal relationship with Him. We see Paul in prison who was singing songs. He was worshiping the Lord. In the darkest moment, he was reaching for God's help. Listening to God means also eliminate distractions. Now, I've read so many articles about the Zoom fatigue. Who hasn't heard of the Zoom fatigue? The problems that we now are too connected. It's becoming too much. Too many connections. That's not good. We need to set aside some time to let God in, to let Him have a personal relationship with us. And this has to be addressed seriously, as we are addressing now the whole changing of our habits. Going on about the teamwork, here we have the bullet what's the name? I have it here. The bullet point approach. And in teamwork, one of the biggest challenges is to facilitate involvement of the members of the team. I don't know if you've ever worked on a university project with your friends. I'm sure that there was the guy who did everything, and the guy who did support him, and the one who just got the mark at the end, right? So there's this tendency in all groups. People have different ways of doing things, of getting involved. And when they're isolated, when they have problems, it's more difficult for them to come out, to take action, to take initiative. It's important for people to feel useful. And that's a great challenge, but at the same time brings great advantages to a group. And when we have our group together, we have mentioned already lack of resources, a different amount of time that we have available, and a different way that we need to study in order to evangelize, to reach out to others, to bring people to our circle of friends. And we don't want to waste those limited resources. We don't want to waste the time we have. So it's really important to brainstorm accordingly to our context. I think that here in Italy, an approach to evangelism right now is completely different from the one that people can have in Finland, maybe. They didn't have a lockdown, ever, you know? So it's very important to gather people together and brainstorm. Get out all the ideas. What is possible? What could we possibly do? Where could we, what our resources? And then move on to what's probable. What could actually work in our context? Why? And then try to test it, try to study it. What are now doing our friends? What are their interests? How can we get to them? Is maybe a TikTok video the solution to give a message of hope? I don't know. What are people following more these days? Besides conspiracy videos on YouTube, I've seen that those guys have a lot of views these days. And then once we set our goals, when we move on in this discussion, to focus on what seems to be working. To pray for what the Holy Spirit has suggested us. Working as a team, exchanging ideas is very powerful. But we've listened before from Pete, who said something about focusing, about not straying, because I think that, and that's something I've seen with our kids at church. We have been doing Zoom meetings. And if normally in person, you have like a 20 minutes attention span, on Zoom, you lost them after 10 minutes. So with my colleagues of the Sunday school, we had to sit down and find new ways, unusual ways on how to attract them. How to give a message that in 15 minutes of focusing of those kids could be efficient and leave them something and make it not be just another Zoom call. The one they do with their teachers, the one they do for school, the one they do with their friends when they're doing their homeworks. So we risk in being trapped in this new routine. But that, again, will waste our resources. So focus on what is working. Try new approaches. Give feedback and evaluate the work done. It's a difficult time. We have to change the way we think. we have to change the approach to evangelism. We have to change. We have changed our communication means in, I don't know, one night, because one day we were able to do everything, and the next day we had the prime minister decree that said, if you go outside of your house without a real reason, you will get a fine. Oh, okay. And now? So we had to start learning how to use Zoom. Everyone had a moment of pause, but then we started to focus. What are the principal goals? It's very important not to waste our resources in this time. So what would Paul do? We are not Paul. We face different challenges. We face problems that maybe seem to overwhelm us. But we shall never forget that we are in a team. We can always count to our brothers and sisters in church. We can count on them on prayer, and we can count on them for their amazing ideas, their time, their resources, and whatever they can bring and move on our evangelism. And then we can try to develop a new lifestyle, new habits on how we can impact the lives of those around us, those people that we can reach in one way or another for a very limited time, probably, but in a very meaningful way. So may God bless us and help us in this endeavor, let's say.